we would like to hear how you, our listeners, who may be polyamorous or maybe kinky, are spending holiday time with your chosen families. So we would like to have you call in and tell us about it. We have a number set up.
It's my personal cell phone.
It is not Max's personal cell phone. So we have a number set up so you can call and leave us a message. Before I give you the number, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You're going to call, you're going to give us your name, you're going to tell us where you are, and then you're going to tell us that you consent for us to use your phone message, and then you're going to tell us about how you're spending time with your chosen family. Either
what you're wearing.
No, not what you're wearing. Either your polyamorous polycule or pod, whatever you refer to yourself as, or your multiple partners, or if you're single, like how you're dealing with that, or if you're solo poly, like maybe you see different partners, or maybe you choose not to see partners for the holidays. Maybe you don't celebrate any holidays. Doesn't matter what holidays you celebrate. Doesn't matter when. So our number is 1-804-404-3577. One more time, that's 1-804-404-3577. It is not a 1-800 number. If you call 1-800, we don't know who you're going to get, but you can tell them about stuff too. So call that number, leave us a message. We are going to take recordings up to and including January 1st, 2020, so that we can find out all about your New Year's plans too. And you can tell us about your future plans or your past plans, just anything you'd like to share with us about your polyam holidays or your kink fam holidays.
And send nudes.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, everybody.
Hello and welcome.
Review and subscribe.
No, but really, please rate us on Apple and Stitcher, the two podcast thingies you can rate us on. If you don't have accounts, you can sign up for free. Ooh, this is a cold cider. The fridge outside is a cold, cold fridge.
It's set to 38, which I am given to understand is the optimal temperature for beer.
So your beer fridge is super beery?
Wouldn't it depend on the
That's the whole deal. That's what it do.
Does it depend on the beer? Is that a thing?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know. I heard somewhere. I don't know that that's correct.
Is that a thing?
Well, I mean, like, some people drink beer warm.
That seems like a poor life choice.
It is a poor life choice, but they still do it.
I have a correction.
Oh.
We just talked about how did this get played and how did this get made. They are, in fact, both Earwolf podcasts. I was certain they were on different networks, but they are both
thought that
Earwolf
How Did This Get
podcasts.
Made was on that, oh, shit, what is it? The other one that's not Earwolf.
Headgum?
No, whatever.
The
Doesn't matter.
Stank Dog Network?
Nose penguin?
We're just saying verbs now. I mean, nouns.
Togu.
Oh, God, this is terrible already.
Would you stop saying things
Togu?
about our podcast are terrible, because our podcast is wonderful and delightful.
No, but that's what you do on a podcast.
No,
is
we do not.
You self-deprecate.
No, we do not, because we are creatures of
maybe
light
you
and
do
love.
not. I do.
Little mad face, Eric.
Stop being mad. Be glad.
I'm not being mad. I'm being self-deprecating.
Well, stop it, because you're also delightful.
It's the gravy flask.
Time to tip up
What you got in your glass there, my friend?
Tip up the au jus.
So, today, thanks to Max's partner, Lauren, they enjoyed, I don't know.
You enjoyed.
You
What are
enjoyed
you
it.
saying?
Come on.
I don't
now.
understand. So,
You sopped it up.
So I did sop it up. I'm a bad vegetarian, y'all. Okay, so we had this beef shank, right? Like, so Lauren got a quarter of a cow, and then Max got like an eighth of this cow.
They got a half of
They
the
got a
cow,
half a cow, and
I got an eighth.
and you got an
I
eighth
got a
of
half
a
of
cow.
a half. of half.
You got like a
16th? A
Yeah.
stink?
did you got like a 16th
I don't
of
know.
a cow?
I don't remember how many pounds it was.
You
but
got-
we got a shitload
Lots
of
of-
meat in a cooler.
We got so
and we
many.
were out in her front yard in the dark with her and her husband tossing pieces of meat in a cooler, and me going like, "All right, man, whatever." So it was
So
like
there was
10
this
pounds
like
of
illicit
hamburger.
meat deal that went down in the forest,
Yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
and then
but it's all
so
vacuum packed very nicely.
so we have this vacuum packed illicit beef. I don't know, maybe.
I'll elicit your beef.
Yeah, you will. And it showed up, and then for Thanksgiving, Max's partner Lauren was in charge of booze, so she brought a gingerbread stout from what local brewery?
Hardywood.
Hardywood, which is a seasonal release, and it's very, very limited and whatever, and it's also kind of tasty.
People go ape shit about it.
And
line
she
up
brought
for hours
2
to get it and shit.
big bottles of it, and so there was some left over, so I let it go flat, stuck it in the fridge, and so we braised this beef shank in for all day basically in the slow cooker
The
with
house smelled so good.
with carrots.
That's pretty good Sean Connery word. Shank.
Shank. Connery shank.
Oh.
Shank.
It smelled so good that the vegetarian thought.
It smells so good that the vegetarian ate the carrots that were soaking in the meat juice. And so Eric, we decided that he just needed to put the meat juice in his flask, and so his flask is full of au jus right now. We're pretty sure.
It's fucking delicious.
What about his pocket tallow?
He's got separate ones. Au jus flask and a whiskey flask. And a tallow pocket. Is that what it was?
Yes, in tallow pocket. So he takes 2 fingers and he dips it slowly into his tallow pocket to do a tallow dab, and then
he does a tallow dab.
tallow dab. No, not that kind
Tallow
of
dab.
dabbing.
Swig of au jus.
This is the best
Tallow
kind
dab.
of dabbing. This one.
Yeah. You put the tallow
Listener
in your
cannot
pocket.
see your tallow dab.
I know, but it's good.
And then
It
you
is
take
a
the
good
meat
dab,
juice
yes.
from your meat juice flask.
It's a well lubricated dab.
I'll give you a well lubricated dab.
Oh, goodness.
Hannah, read the introduction.
Welcome to the Pod Pulp.
Welcome to the
Pollen
tallow
blast.
dab cast.
Meat cast.
If it's not evident, we are all meat drunk.
Welcome to the Pod Cultcast, where we talk about life, love, learning, and libido, and share our journey through polyamory and kink. I'm Hannah.
I'm Eric.
How have I been reading this for the last 3 months and not noticed that journey doesn't have a Y?
Why doesn't
It's been
have a
like this
Y?
the whole time.
I think Chastain and I are having a Mexican standoff
Oh,
on
no.
who's going to say our name.
That's racist.
You can say each other's names.
I'm
Short
Max,
circuit.
and I'm not allowed to call myself Whiskey Dick Calhoun anymore.
And that's Chastain over there.
And that's
I'm
Chastain.
Chastain. I'm sorry. Pod meat cast.
Oh, goodness.
I thought it
You
was
just
the
had to
meat tallow cast.
Get that
Or
out
the
of
tallow
the world
meat
there.
dab cast.
I just put that into the world, and now it's come to fruition.
Pod Beefcast.
Pod beef cast.
The tallow
Hannah, rate
Cat.
my beef.
dab cast.
Oh,
Hannah,
there's
rate my
just
beef.
so many things I don't want to rate.
Hashtag Hannah, rate my beef.
Bumble beef.
Hold on, guys. I've got to go register HannahRateMyBeef.com. And,
Prepare me beautiful dishes.
and you guys are going to be getting a bill for $7 for HannahRateMyBeef.com. I only did it for 1 year, so I didn't. It's only $7.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Right on.
It's going to be worth something. Just
I
wait.
think we should go ahead and just clean this episode now, just to get it out of the way.
What's the disclaimer that we're drinking?
No, I don't know. I think, it's not a Mexican standoff because that's racist.
That's
Is it?
it's
That's
a
what it's
term. It's a
called, though.
phrase. Like,
Is it not? Is it okay to say that?
I don't know. Do you want us to call the consulate of Mexico?
I don't
Like-
know that they
I
know
don't
the
know.
answer to
I
that.
don't know because earlier you said the word imp and I wasn't sure if that was racist.
Yeah, that's even further
Yeah.
off
What
the
do you
mark.
like? What?
What?
What? How is your like? Why is your tuning turned way up tonight?
I don't know.
I mean, we do live in a world where not everything is offensive.
I don't know anything anymore.
Whoa, was there an elk? What?
I want to understand what's happening with Hannah tonight.
Mexican standoff or not. Ready? Here we go.
What is this, Hannah?
This is just a video with examples from movies that may or may not be a Mexican standoff. You don't actually know what a Mexican standoff is.
I think that Hannah has taken her role as our podcast researcher a little too far. I don't know.
This is fucking anarchy.
I love it.
This is a podcast where we talk about... Oh, wait. Yeah, this is the right one.
Yeah, it is the one.
This is a podcast.
Is it?
You're on the right podcast. You're here.
Have we actually been releasing these? Or is this just a weird long con on your part?
Who can say?
It gets us to hang out.
That actually sounds like...
Yeah, that sounds like some straight Chastain shit.
That sounds like... So tell me about your feelings about anxiety.
None of this has actually gone out into the world. We just...
I made a fake.
I've
been telling
all the plugs are laying loose on the floor, and we just haven't noticed.
I've just
Does
been
this
like,
mean that Sydney is also not real?
I've been telling our friends what to say to us.
Canberra
Sydney is actually in Australia.
I've just been gaslighting you the
We're
whole
on
time.
Matrix shit.
It's like Lost. Like, never mind.
In what way? In what way? How is it like Lost?
Like
I didn't watch that one either.
You have to push the button to find out.
Smoke monster, etc. Thank you. That's everything I know about Lost.
That was more than me.
Dharma Initiative.
Just claim us.
This is a podcast where we talk about... Oh, Jesus. This is a podcast where we talk about love and relationships, sex and kink, and polyam issues, and whatever else comes up. While we talk about those things, we'll probably also touch on stuff like abuse and violence and mental health challenges. These can be difficult topics, so keep that in mind moving ahead.
I'd meet Flask.
Oh, that's the best iteration. Hannah hit the best iteration.
It just came to me.
All right, guys. Shut it down. Shut it down. It's not getting any better. Shut it down.
Oh, the dog is
Back
upset.
up the truck, guys.
No, you upset the dog.
Back up
Hannah's
the truck.
gotta
We're
make-
packing it up.
Hannah's
This
gotta make her
episode is
exit
now
like
called
Costanza.
Pod
That's
Meat
right.
Flask.
Unplug everything. Shut it down.
Thank
Turn
you.
off the lights.
Thank you for supporting our podcast. This is the last episode. No, I'm kidding. So hey everybody. Hey guys. Hey everybody.
Hi there.
Hello ladies and hello ladies.
What's up, guys?
That
What's
was my
up
Freddie
guys?
Boom Boom
So today
Washington.
I thought we would talk about coming out. Coming out.
Coming out of what?
The closet. But like not the
But not in that way.
well, no,
Right.
not absolutely in that way.
In
So,
it-
shh. Coming out of the closet as kinky or polyamorous to a variety of people in the world.
We also have two people here who can talk about
Coming out of the
as
closet as
queer.
queer, yes.
if they choose to.
Which I'm one of those people.
Wait, which two?
I'm queer. Hello. Hello.
Jess, you definitely have to edit this out, but my strong inclination was to say Yo Mama.
Yo, mama?
When Eric said which two, I wanted to say Yo Mama so bad. Okay, go ahead.
Right.
I thought you said Obama.
Hey, Eric,
Obama.
say which
Oh.
two again.
Which two?
Yo Mama. Okay, cool. Now we can keep
Moving ahead.
Moving ahead. So I thought we could talk about coming out as queer, kinky, polyamorous, whatever you want to come out as, to a variety of people, because there are different levels of coming out to different people, right? There's coming out to friends, there's coming out to doctors or therapists, and then there's coming out to your family. And there's also coming out to people like, your religious family, your spiritual family. There's coming out to coworkers and, work environment stuff.
Yep.
There's all that stuff. So I thought we could kind of break it down by category and talk about it. On our origin stories, our polyam origin story episodes, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 where we talk about the house. No, 6 where we talk about the house. Some of those, wherever. I'll link them in the show notes. We individually talk about sort of coming out as whatever, but I thought we could kind of put it all in one episode. I had a talk with somebody who was asking me questions about coming out to family because the holidays are going on and we want to be around our partners, and it's difficult to be around our partners and our family if they don't know that we're queer or polyamorous or kinky or what have you. And depending on the type of coming out you're doing, you might handle it differently. So I thought we could just, have a chat about that and how you might handle it differently given the situation. And because those situations have different levels of privacy and different levels of emotional impact on your life, I just thought we would sort of break down the categories. So I thought the easiest one to start with would be talking to doctors or mental health professionals because they are...
Sorry. Can I throw a speed bump in before we actually go into the categories?
Sure.
Can we just talk about the concept of coming out?
Yes.
Real quick? Because I think there are a lot of things like kinky and polyam in which coming out doesn't necessarily have to be this, grand announcement.
Yeah, it doesn't hold
You don't
the
have
same
to,
weight.
set off the streamers and the pyrotechnics and say, I am polyam. It can just be a matter of kind of casually mentioning, if you're married and you kind of casually mention that, you have a date, that can also be coming out. It doesn't have to be a grand announcement.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's different? That's different than coming out as queer or gay?
To me,
have to be a grand
and Hannah has rightly challenged me on this, and Hannah can challenge me on this right now if she wants to do it. If we want to have a on-mic conversation about it. To me, it is a difference in identity. I don't generally say that being polyam, being non-monogamous is an identity, whereas even as someone who is a cis-hetero, regular old white dude, do recognize that being queer is an identity. It is who you are. In the same way that being straight is who I am, as opposed to having non-monogamous relationships is a big part of my life, but I don't, for me, look at it as who I am.
So I have a question. When was your, big being heterosexual, bar mitzvah or whatever?
Okay, don't act like you're putting me on the wrong side of this argument.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to make a comparison because I'm queer, just like Hannah, and I don't think there needs to be a big celebration. I don't think there needs to be this big special thing. I think it should just be I should be able to casually say, oh yeah, and I'm not straight.
Okay. Well, now we're talking about should versus reality,
I think the reality should be that it should all be normal.
You're saying should. You said should twice, and I'm talking about the difference between should and the fact that we live in a heteronormative society where that's different.
But how do we change that? We change
That's not what we're talking about.
Well, but we change it by making the change. So we change it by acting like it's normal. We fake it till we make it.
Okay.
So I don't think that we need a big grand gesture to say hey, this is my orientation. This is who I am.
Well, and honestly, I am getting over my skis a little bit here because I am talking about something I don't have any authority to talk about. But it does feel different to me.
It feels different to you, but you're talking about the fact that you think that I feel like coming out, we're talking about coming out. You're talking about the difference between labeling yourself and an identity, right?
Which would be the motivator to come out in the sense that one of you is saying. I'm not even sure which one anymore. One side of that, I believe, sounds like I don't know, one is deserving of an event because it is the different thing, and you're saying that it should be a normalized thing. You're just talking about different things.
All right, so I made a mistake by mentioning streamers and pyrotechnics. I'm not talking about an event. I'm talking about the difference in gravity.
You're talking about the effects that such
I'm not
a thing
talking
would have
about
in day-to-day life.
literal pyrotechnics. Like, I'm talking about the difference in gravity.
9.8 meters per second squared.
There are all different kinds of coming out and all different degrees of that, right?
Right.
Because, just like you were saying, maybe for some people that can be just a natural process and it's not as big of a deal. And maybe for other people, it's, really fraught. And I don't know. I think that we've broadened the way that we use that term to just mean that whatever we were scared to share, we've either reached a point of, personal crisis, or we've reached a point of trust with an individual that we feel safe to share that. And that obviously just varies immensely by circumstance.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think what we're dealing with is that I'm going to ask you if you can all agree with this statement. Do you agree that at this time, polyamory is not the societal norm?
It is not.
That's right.
Do you agree with at this time that BDSM or power dynamics or kinky relationships at this time are not the norm?
They are not.
No.
Okay. And although I personally don't consider those things to be an identity, like who I am, they are things that I choose to do that make up, that are important to me, but they aren't an identity. And that's me and how I look at it. And if you look at it differently, that's how you look at it. And I know, Hannah, you identify as polyamorous, right? That's a thing that you have talked about before.
Sure. Yeah. So we've had that conversation
Right.
before. I have come across recently a lot more people saying that they feel like that's their orientation.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm trying to take that into consideration and take that as a challenge and say, just because we haven't often talked about it that way, I can certainly understand why somebody would, say that
Right.
that's part of their identity. So I don't know. I'm trying to be thoughtful and maybe change the language that I'm using, to not be as emphatic that the way I've seen it is the only way to look at it.
Right. And I think that, there are so many different words to describe the way that we think about things that we have to be open to other people's interpretation of stuff. So when we talk about things like LGBTQ and that being our identity, like I think of that as identity, can we all agree that there is a large portion of society that are LGBTQ? I don't know what the
Not a
percentage.
large portion.
I don't know what the percentage is right
In
now.
the U.S., the last thing I read was 6% of U.S. respondents to whatever survey.
Okay, so respondents to a survey or a census
I
or
would say
whatever.
6% is not a large portion.
So that's
So
6%.
it's not a large proportion, but it's still a lot of people. If
It
were
is still a lot of people.
it expanded
It is-
across the whole
It is.
population,
It's roughly
Right.
the same amount of people in the U.S. that identify as Jewish.
Right.
Like it's
So that's a lot of people. So I would say that at this time, it is more accepted as a societal, is growing into a societal norm. Would you agree with that?
I don't agree with the way you're phrasing it.
I don't know if it's that there are more people or it's more socially acceptable.
Would you say it's more socially accepted?
There's
Yes.
a lot more visibility.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a lot
Then
more
there
visible.
used
More
to be-
visible.
Thank you,
Okay,
Hannah.
okay,
Yeah,
thank
and there's
you,
a lot
Hannah.
more visibility
Yes.
for that than there are for
Okay.
multiple partnerships.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Well, I want to come to agreement on these things because when we're talking about coming out, I don't want us to have I don't want us to sit here and talk about some things and then quibble over terminology.
So yes, it was good to do that first.
Good
before
job,
jumping
Max.
right into it.
Yeah, and I'm flipping back to my notes on CBS special thing that we watched recently.
Because they gave some
I'm
percentage.
trying to get the percentages, which
I have that too.
I did not write down.
I did.
But
it went from like 4 and 5% in one thing and 20% in another.
Yeah, it was 20% of U.S.
It was
people.
4 to 5% of United States.
Look at that. No.
Participating.
Pothead had the numbers.
Oh, yes.
What percentage of Americans identify as potheads?
Oh, a bunch.
They can't remember. Ha!
Yeah. I don't know, man.
4 to 5% of people in the
That's
United
just
States
like your opinion, man.
are currently participating in non-monogamous relationships, and then it was 1 in 4 people in the United States had participated in a non-monogamous relationship.
Right. Okay.
You said 20%. That was correct.
I know.
No,
that's
1
why I
in
said
4
it.
is 25%.
I'm sorry. So
One
it
in
was 1
5.
in 5.
It was
Sorry.
1 in 5.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. I didn't write the other one down. I'm sorry. Okay.
I didn't either.
Okay. So do we feel like, so what you're saying is, what were you saying?
Well, so yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that because as we talk about these different levels of quote fingers coming out, like the different strata of relationships
Yes.
and the different heaviness of relationships has determined the different ways that I have quote fingers come out to different people, whether it is a very serious discussion or whether I just kind of casually mention I have a girlfriend in addition to my wife or whatever.
Yes. So in working with, as a life and relationship coach, in working with people who are kinky and or polyamorous and or LGBTQ, usually it's some combination of all three, but there have been, individuals with there and out as well. When asked, how do I come out to people? We usually develop a plan, and we usually first identify who they want to come out to. And we establish what kind of relationship they have with that person. Are they a partner? Are they a friend? Are they a family member? And then we find out if they know what kind of views those people have about things like alternative lifestyles, etc. And then we talk about how those people have handled conflict with this person in the past when they've had differing ideas or when there's been something that's come up that's caused conflict, like how they've gone through arguments and so forth. And then we have gone through sort of the worst case scenario. What do you think would happen if this person rejects you? How would that make you feel? How do you think you would handle it? And what support do you have in place? And so we develop a plan to go through all of that. And it's always based on the relationship with the individual. So if you're dealing with a whole family, I never suggest come out to the whole family. I never suggest to come out to a group of friends. I never suggest to come out to your entire medical team or whatever. It's always deal with an individual. So that individual relationship you're talking about, that context, that is the most important thing that I, as a coach, see. And as an individual who has come out to people, that has always been the best strategy for me. Because when I have talked to a couple more people, like, it doesn't give them the space to sort of process, You were smiling at something. What were you smiling about? Was it me moving my hands?
No.
What was it?
I was going to ask Eric if he thought that maybe the percentage of Americans that identify as potheads is 4.20%.
Oh, he's looking it up.
He's not looking it up.
What is he doing? I know you're not social mediaing it. Are you telling your best friend?
No, why would I do anything?
Because he's your only social media.
Well, the moment's passed now.
Oh.
Not looking at anything up.
Because he's 420.
Yeah.
That was the whole joke.
So you would not recommend getting on Facebook and saying, hello, surprise, I have a certain type of relationship.
I mean, that's a way to handle it. I mean, that's certainly how I came out to my dad. But then I really don't have a a conversational relationship with my dad.
Well, and
I'm pretty sure my sister told my dad way before that. So
I think that's kind of what I'm saying, and I think that's how I know that's how some people have kind of figured out the deal without me quote fingers, I'm using a lot of quote fingers tonight, coming out is that, for example, so for example, Chastain, you and I had a relationship around the time that we got married with a woman.
We'll call her Sarah.
Together. We'll call her Sarah. And there were, social media pictures of us at the three of us and she and I at like different things together. Like there was a pumpkin ride, a pumpkin patch hayride thing that we went to the horse track. There were things like that. And like I had someone like send me a direct message on Facebook or a Facebook Messenger message, I guess. And it was like, hey, so what's the deal with this? And I think that is a way that without some sort of grand pronouncement that a lot of us do come out, is just to like live our lives and share events in our lives that happen to involve different people, and people either kind of figure it out or they don't.
Yeah. Well, before we get too deep into anecdotal stuff, I would like to try to kind of start with the easiest people to come out to first.
Okay.
And then get to the friends, because I think the friends are the next easiest group. So I think the easiest people to come out to are, like I said earlier, doctors. Because doctors and mental health professionals and people like me, life coaches, are held to confidentiality clauses and there are HIPAA rules and stuff. We're not allowed to share information unless we think you're going to hurt people in the future. Let's talk about experiences we've had when we've talked about being polyamorous with medical professionals or being kinky with medical professionals, why that might have happened, when it came about, etc., etc.
Yeah, I had a conversation with my doctor. Sort of the beginning of that relationship was also when I was exploring kink and meeting a lot of new people and having a lot of new experiences. And, based on the little bit of research and conversation that I had had, it seemed to me that the best thing was to start out that relationship with a medical professional by saying, hey, here's what I do. Here's what you might observe. Here's what to be worried about and not be worried about. And if that's not okay with you, let me know now, please, so that I can find someone else. And of course, because they're professionals and it's their responsibility, my doctor's response was, oh, if it's fine with you, it's fine with me. Just be careful because I'm a mom. Was exactly what she said. Like, I'd let me be a mom for a second.
That's
like,
so
please just be careful. It was the sweetest, tenderest moment. Definitely the best experience that I've had. And I've kept going to that office, even though it takes me like an hour to get there now. Just because everyone, like the nurses, all the office staff, did not need to be let in on all of those details, obviously, but have just been really compassionate, and understanding of everything that I've thrown their way. So
that's awesome. Like I've had, an opposite experience. I used to go to a doc in the box for just, whatever ache and pain I would have and get my doctor's note and leave.
What about the Lonely Island?
I love that song.
It's the objectively worst Lonely Island song.
But I think the best is absolutely the Big Blue Watery Wave. What is the
I'm on a boat.
I'm on a boat, yes. But Dick in a Box I enjoy it. Now I call Doc in a Box any of the urgent care facilities. So patient first. So I used to have a relationship with patient first, and they got a medical director who happened to be overlording them while Max and I were dating. And while Max and I were dating happened to be a time during which one of the incidents was when Max and I were wrestling in bed and my nose got broken.
Oh no.
So Max told me I was fine so that I wouldn't freak out. We were just wrestling and his head popped back and popped me in the nose. It was fine. Like, it was nothing violent.
You poked me in the side.
I did. I absolutely.
It was involuntary response.
Yeah.
I positively consented to wrestling. It was an accident. I went to the doctor the next day.
But this was also a time where you had fallen down the steps once.
Well, wait, I'm getting there. So I had broken my nose. And I went to patient first and they confirmed it, and it was really uncomfortable, and I missed like a day of work, whatever. So, then I was also on crutches because I fell on the steps carrying laundry, and my son called my roommate and she got me to patient first, and that was really sweet of her. And then I also slipped on ice and hurt my wrist.
Oh, no.
Basically, like
I burst your eardrum by accident
Yes.
on another occasion.
Yes, we were having some rough sex and you smacked me and you burst my right eardrum. These things happened. So at one point, that director comes in instead of the doctor that I was supposed to see and says, we've observed some trends in your visits to us, and it seems like you might not be safe at home. So we need you to tell us what's going on, and we're concerned about you. And so can you tell us what's going on? And I said, I'm just clumsy. And she said, that's the stereotypical Lifetime movie response. What's going on? And so I said, like, look, I'm fine.
Don't base your knowledge on Lifetime movies. That's what I would have said.
I said, I'm fine. My boyfriend and I like to play rough, and it's consensual. And I'm also just really a clumsy person, and I have been since I was a child. So I didn't never have the same doctor. I didn't have a relationship with a primary care physician. I hate doctors. I've never been able to form a relationship with a doctor until my glorious and beautiful neurologist that I have now. I love her. But I don't talk to her about kinky stuff because she doesn't need to know. So had I had a doctor I had a relationship with, I would have absolutely said, like, hey, this happens, blah, blah, blah. So I had an opposite experience. So I'm so glad that you had a wonderful experience with that. Anybody else?
Bring it around Three Bears style. One was the hot, one was the cold. I've not had either.
Do you go to the doctor?
Not really.
Yeah, and the only time I go to the doctor is for our testing.
Yeah.
And so and this is the only reason I would have to talk about this. So, when I have gone for testing, I went the very first time to a doc in the box. And when I said, this is what I'm here for, this is what I'm requesting, and they said, why? I said, because I have several sexual partners. And then I had to explain that, and they were all behaved in a manner in which indicated to me they were icked out by the whole thing. And then at Planned Parenthood, I surprisingly had a pretty similar experience when I explained that to them.
I did not have a negative reaction from Planned Parenthood. With me, they were all like, ooh, you go, girl. That's interesting. So I feel like it was just a gender gap thing there.
Yeah. But the place that we get testing frequently now, it seems very normalized, and they're
they
into
don't
it.
care.
And,
they're like, yeah, cool, whatever.
Yeah, and a couple times
you came here.
Yeah, a couple times just in the small talk while I'm getting my blood drawn. They'll say, so what are you doing next? And I go, well, my whole pod is here and we're going to go have dinner or whatever. And they're like, oh, yeah, we like to do, I like to do this with my partners as well. Yeah. And my friends all come together. So it seems much more normalized. Oddly, because where we do it is a state agency, so it's odd that it is more normal and
it's pretty
accepted.
Chill. Yeah. Eric, have they asked you the last couple times if you're here with a partner? Because they sometimes ask me, but they don't.
They usually ask, not if I'm with a partner, but how I ended up there, and then I'll say that, and then they're like, oh, that's great.
For a while they were tracking, right? They would match up
I think
your
it's still
charts.
In the forms, right?
Really?
But they haven't asked me the last couple of times.
Yeah.
There, I only got somebody, I don't know. I was about to say someone hassling me, but it wasn't really like that. They were kind of pushing back on what I was asking for, and I was trying to explain, why I had this routine, and it got awkward. But most of the time, they don't really care.
I've never really had a problem, but I think that we had some issues because they're losing their funding, right? They've lost funding, and there's some issues. We talked about that with our testing episode, which will be linked in our show notes. You can go back and check out our testing episode. Absolutely know your status. Absolutely get tested. There is no shame, and they don't care if you're kinky or polyamorous, or if you're LGBTQ.
No, they're just happy that people are
They're happy
tested.
that you're getting tested, because the more you get tested and know your status, the more you're helping to reduce the rates of STIs in our country and countries around the world, yada, yada, yada. Get tested.
And I think that in previous visits, they have asked, are you here with a partner singular or with your partner singular? To which I've responded like, yes, number 6 and 8 are my partners who are here.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying the Pod Cultcast, check out our podcast show notes at www.podpodcultcast.com or keep up with us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook at PodCultcast and Instagram at Cult with a V. Love us? Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or help us continue to make this podcast possible by becoming a patron. Head over to patreon.com/PodPodCultcast. Remember, that's Cult with a V. Our patrons get access to exclusive content, cool swag, and our exclusive Patreon series, the Cultcast Media Club podcast.
Thanks to our Patreon patrons, Jenny, Sydney, Kate, Chip, Beth, Maggie, and Lauren.
It's been too long since I've seen it to remember that.
But also, you don't watch professional wrestling, so you wouldn't know.
I haven't since the 80s.
So we're recording and discussing Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone.
He also did a movie called Rhinestone.
With Dolly Parton, which we talked about in our episode number 22?
Yeah,
It's going to be linked to the show notes.
Which was...
He recorded a country song.
It was the last...
Called Drinkenstein.
It was the last movie, I think, that showed in the drive-in theater that was around here that you could see just driving down the public road in front of it.
Oh, wow.
Very specific childhood memory.
On the one on Route 1?
No, out here.
So that sound you might be hearing is in the background is the sound of Oliver, our #poddog, chewing on his bone.
Yeah,
I
so
can feel it in my feet.
For context,
Literally.
why everything changed so quickly, we took a little break after
talking about
so we could go
coming.
pee and get drinks.
Well, you don't have to tell them that.
It's fine.
So we were talking about coming out to healthcare providers, but I want to take just a quick moment to talk about coming out to mental health care people, like therapists, counselors, etc.
Right.
It's pretty much the same, but you do typically have a more intimate relationship with them because you talk about feelings and stuff. I have had good and bad experiences with coming out as kinky and polyamorous. Never had a negative experience coming out as not straight, as queer, or as a lesbian or bisexual. I've never had a negative experience with that with a mental health provider. On one of our previous episodes, which we will link in the show notes, we talked to Dr. Lindsay Weisner, who had a lot of questions about polyamory. And I thought that was a very positive experience because she wanted to learn about polyamory, which is really, really good. And that can not always be the case. I find that it's really touch and go. If you're looking for a kink or polyamorous friendly therapist, the best place to start is with the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom. They actually have a directory on their website, which we will link in the show notes, where you can find providers. It's also good that if you're in a local group where you socialize with people, either Facebook or on FetLife, you can ask people what are some good providers. People are typically happy to share providers that they are happy with and that have been giving them good treatment. Currently, I have been using
Kink Yelp.
Kink Yelp. Kind of. Currently, I've been using Talkspace. My provider.
How is that kind of Kink Yelp?
Currently, I'm using Talkspace, and my therapist is in Virginia, like I am. I think she's a counselor. And I've been very open with her about what I do. I've been open about being a retired sex worker. I've been open about being kinky. I've been open about being polyamorous and talked about my partners and all this stuff. She's been very supportive. She asks questions when she needs to. She appreciates it when I give her definitions of words I'm not sure she might get. And it's been a very positive experience. So I've been very out and open and not had any problems. So has anybody else worked with a mental health care provider here and talked to people?
Yeah, the last time I've talked to therapists 3 or so different occasions at different time periods, and the last time I did was Chas, when you and I were going through a very difficult time, and I was also going through a difficult breakup with a different partner, and I really wasn't using it correctly. Like, I just wanted somebody to say, yeah man, that's fucked up, but the beginning of my search was to search for someone who was LGBTQA plus friendly, because I thought that was a good place to start, with someone who would understand polyam issues and just general kink, sex party, like weird shit issues. And that went pretty well, and I landed exactly what I was looking for at the time, which was somebody who understood those interactions and also would go, yeah, man, that's fucked up. But, I came away from the experience going like, oh, I think this was just somebody who was collecting the $120 an hour and going, yeah, man, that's fucked up, and not really offering me very much beyond that, which is what I wanted. But also, like, it would be kind of nice to be kicked in the pants sometimes when what you need is not what you want, Yeah,
my personal rule of thumb with any mental health care provider is if by the third or fourth session, if you've been in a treatment for like a month and you don't have a specific treatment plan that you've worked on with them and drawn out that is designed to get you somewhere, then they're taking your money. They're not working towards your future betterment.
Yeah, I had started working with somebody through Talkspace and had that experience where it was like, oh, this is pleasant. I enjoy having someone to talk with. But she just asked me, so how are you feeling every time? And that doesn't give me any way to measure like what ground we've covered or what progress we're making. I put that on pause. So I'm going to try again, probably with somebody else.
My counselor kicks my fucking ass. She is hardcore. I will start like whining about whatever, and she will go like, didn't we talk about this? Like, we said that we were not going to do ABC. And I said, oh, yeah, you're right. And then she'll go, so what are you going to do instead? And then I have to talk about what I'm going to do instead. And then she checks in and like actually asks me if I did it. It's like fucking homework.
So let's go back though, because there was something else that I think we just kind of slipped on by. Although both you, Chastain, and you, Hannah, kind of mentioned it, and it's something anecdotally I've heard from our friends who are more involved in BDSM relationships, kink relationships and stuff, which is going to doctors with bruises, going to doctors with, all sorts of marks. And I don't think any of us can really speak to that issue. So we should get one of our friends in here sometime to talk about.
Yeah, I think we should.
That is a good idea.
That is a good idea. So this is a call out to anybody who listens to this show. To Frank. Hey, Frank. This is a call to you. To anybody who listens to the show who knows us and who would be willing to discuss maybe getting marked up and stuff like that. Like, I know we know people who like to get really marked up. And if you would be comfortable talking about that, you know who you are.
Including our friend Marked Up.
Marked Up. Marked Up. You are so great.
I don't care what you say. That was funny.
That was funny. That was funny. So, we'd love to have you. We would love to have you on the podcast and to talk about that. We need to do some more kink content. It's difficult because only Hannah and I are kinky, and we are like the weird, fucked up kinky. I don't feel like we are accessible kinky.
We'll work on being more accessible.
In your kinkness.
In our kink.
Let's move on to another category. We're getting bogged down in the...
All right, so next category is coming out to friends.
Did we pick friends because friends are supposed to be the next easiest?
I think so.
Yeah, so doctors and therapists have to be confidential unless they think you're gonna like murder somebody. Yeah, friends is the next easiest.
I've only had... most of my current friends that I actually interact with and like have a lot to do with are people that we have met in the last few years through polyam and kink circles.
So that's
idea. That. But the long-term older friends that I still have who are just like dudes I might hang out with once every 3 months, that sort of friendship. Like every one of those, when I've gone like, all right, here are the 3 things you need to know about what's going on inside my relationships. Like, just kind of go like, all right, man, that's cool. And then it moves on.
Yeah.
Like I have not had any kind of negative experiences with it whatsoever. I also haven't had any great affirming experiences. I have just had experiences of people going like, all right, man, that's cool.
So the majority of people that I'm friends with who know about it have been either like, huh, well, that's weird, but okay, whatever. I don't care. You do you.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it's just...
Or they have been, you know what? Like, I think that's really cool. You do you. I've had a lot of friends who have said things like, I have a platonic marriage and I wish that we could open our marriage, but I don't think that my partner would be comfortable with that because there's still a lot of possessiveness there. I have had friends who've said, could I come to a kink party?
And you have brought those friends.
And I have brought them. I have had friends that have said, like, I'm in a shitty marriage and I really need some stuff right now, like, and I'm looking for attention. And I have had sex with those friends in a therapeutic way. Like, I've had friends who have, I've had friends who are no longer my friends. Like, I've had across the spectrum responses, and I don't feel rejected when they're no longer my friends, because honestly, I'm at a point in my life where if somebody doesn't feel like they can be my friend because of who I am and who I love, then that's fine. They're not, then I don't need them to be my friend.
Yeah, I and it's a difference in our boundary issue stuff. Like, I
have no boundaries.
There is a particular longer term older friend that, has been to non-kink things here, has hung out and watched wrestling with us, has been to live wrestling shows with us, who knows both you, Chastain, and Hannah, and knows what the deal is.
Unfriended me.
And you have asked if I want to invite him to some of the kink parties and stuff. And, like, there's a certain amount of, like, worlds colliding that I don't need to happen, that I don't really want to happen. Yeah. The dog's about to mess up my microphone. So that for me, like, you are perfectly willing to have friends at kink parties, non-kinky friends at kink parties.
Yeah.
And, there's a amount of worlds colliding that I'm, comfortable with not having happen.
For me, I don't mind people being curious and seeing if something is for them. And I also don't mind people deciding if something is not for them, so long as they are respectful and mind consent and not going to get wasted and make asses of themselves.
Well, no, and I'm great with those friends exploring those things about themselves in other places. Like, there are plenty of other places you can go that doesn't involve.
You mean your friends?
Yeah. There are plenty of places that you can go to explore those things that don't involve, like, changing the type
existing
of friendship
dynamic.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
And also I think it's like a weird thing where, like, a lot of these people are people that I've known since high school or I've known since childhood, and I went through a lot of self-esteem issues, and it's really lovely for me to be able to go, like, here's who I am, and here's who I always wanted to be, and here's who I was before a lot of things kind of broke me for a while, and I'm glad that you kind of stuck it out, and I'm glad that we're still friends, and here's the real me. The real me likes to wear lingerie and, like, have big silly toasts in her house and have naked people having sex around her. That's the real me. Thanks for being part of that.
Hannah, are you comfortable talking about the strain of people that you know who were both in the, like, evangelical world that you grew up in and now are at least, like, weird kink world adjacent? Are you comfortable talking about that? Or we can just skip all that if you don't want to talk about it.
No, that's actually good. I was sitting here thinking, like, because I exited the church at the same time that I exited the closet, those relationships there was space there automatically. Created distance between the two sets of, relationships that I had. But you're exactly right. As I continue on in life in the same city with the same people, now I have some connections that kind of exist on the edge of both worlds. That's been awesome in a lot of ways. I at least knew friends of friends early on that I felt comfortable enough to, like, text or say, hey, can we get on a Skype call and, like, can you tell me about your polyam experiences? Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel right now. I don't know if this is for me. I had at least a handful of people that I felt fine reaching out to, which was weird because, of course, we could never have talked about that from inside our evangelical experiences, but we were having these parallel journeys. I will say that showing up to a party and seeing somebody out of context, like you were saying, is really uncomfortable. And that doesn't necessarily say anything about anything except my personal inhibitions, but seeing people out of context can be really unsettling.
Yeah.
Well, that's a thing that I find unsettling in any experience. When I see somebody I used to work with at the gym, I'm like,
no, hide. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's just, I'm going to make a small confession here. There may be a small element of, there are some people that I probably wanted to kiss in high school, but I was very closeted as a little bisexual girl. So there might be a small element of like, hey, come to my sexy party because maybe girls will kiss me. There might be a small element of that, but it is not an expectation. It is just a small element of, maybe that's why I dropped that boundary just a little bit.
In an environment where like that's a possibility, where it wasn't a possibility in the other environment.
Kind of, yeah. And it's also, I don't feel scared about asking.
Right.
Like,
well, you're asking somebody to step into your world instead of trying to put that desire into.
And because they're already a little off kilter, I would never, ever, ever manipulate consent. And I would never put somebody into a position where they didn't feel comfortable. But in a situation where somebody is already kind of spreading their wings, if I could tell somebody was kind of like, oh, I'm curious about what's happening, what's going on here, and like, oh, I wish I could try that. Like, I'm going to go, like, would you like to try that? Like, I'm going to become Willy Wonka, and like...
It's a little fucked up that you have to clarify that, though. Like, that the perspective is, oh, if you are coming out to somebody or being honest with them about your life and your desires, it's obviously because you're trying to entrap them.
I'm not trying to.
No, I know you're not.
But there is a small piece of like...
Is it the context of what we're talking about, what would be prudent to talk to friends that were not inclined to participate in this? This sounds like some kind of magical, like, oh, I'm telling these people who I am.
Okay, so
hey, they want to do it too. There's a lot of times that's not the case.
Okay, so I will tell a quick anecdote about a friend, a friend of my mom's who is somebody that I have lost in my life, because she was also a friend of mine. I was in Godspell for several years with my kindergarten teacher, and who is a very, very, very devout Catholic, and who is very, very, very pro-choice. And I was friends with this person on Facebook, and I was very vocal about my political beliefs, my sexual orientation, and my family stuff. And
is there an end to this sentence?
Don't interrupt me. And she would post very, very upsetting things about anti-abortion stuff. And she would also send me very upsetting messages about how my lifestyle, my marriage, basically how I was living my life would be such a disappointment to my mother, who was an Episcopalian. So, like, come on. My mom was not, like, into the Pope. My mom was an Episcopalian. And, chill out. But how I would be a disappointment to my mother because my mother had suffered so much, and how could I, like, live how I live? And this is the only person who has ever talked to me this way, and it was my kindergarten teacher.
Well, then fuck her.
Well, I know, but I also, like, performed in several productions with her growing up. I took like some dance stuff with her daughter. I like this person was in my life strongly and my mom's best friend for years. So like, this is the person who came to my house. Like, this is the person I called when my stepfather was hitting my mom. And this is the person that I had to cut out of my life because they could not accept who I was. And I didn't come out to her. I was just Facebook being myself. So, sorry for tears. But, yeah, like, that is a person who was not all butterflies and sunshine, magical, whatever, but whom I considered to be a friend and kind of a parental figure, and somebody I never thought would ever reject me because they had told me when I was a child that people are supposed to be loved for who they are.
Yeah, so hypocritical.
Yeah, I know. You're not telling me anything I don't know.
Well, and like to take like a step back and
Yeah.
to take it out of a
Personal, yeah.
an emotional range. Like since my father died, I had lots of in sort of the immediate time period after my father died.
Right.
I had lots of people tell me like about my father and about how he would feel about different things and like how
Right.
he would respond. And everything that we think about people, especially after they've died, is a projection we put upon them that has
Absolutely.
nothing to do with their actual person.
Oh, absolutely.
So when like my father's step siblings or people he worked with who would go like, "Oh, your dad would think this," I'd like, "No, my dad was a son of a bitch. Like you didn't
Yeah.
know him."
No, and I agree
You know?
with that completely.
So this person like may have been your mom's quote best friend, but
Yeah.
she didn't know your mom.
No,
Like,
no,
I knew
absolutely.
your mom.
Yeah, I know. I know. And my mom was like a weirdo hippie bitch. So
But let's can we
No,
just
but-
I don't want to discount your experience or
You're
your
not.
feelings
No,
whatsoever.
so
but
bringing it
can we,
back.
yeah.
I was just responding to Eric, like Eric was saying,
Yeah.
like friends and stuff.
Right.
So that was an experience with somebody that I considered a friend
Mm-hmm.
who didn't accept me.
Yeah.
Sure.
So do we want to, are like friends?
Hannah has something to say.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Hannah does not have something to say.
Eric, do you want
Yes.
to talk about coming out to a friend?
Well, is it just a real basic and easy through line to all of this? The way, and it doesn't even really matter which hierarchical level of coming out we're talking about here. My approach to it is, if it's something that I'm going to tell you, that I'm already pretty sure that you're going to accept it. Otherwise, you don't need to know.
Right. There's that.
So many of the friends that I have that have nothing to do with any of this lifestyle or identification or what have you, know and are perfectly okay with it. And the range of responses that I get are either, "Huh, cool, whatever," or they've got a couple of questions, usually jokingly, and that's about it. Yeah. If it's somebody I don't think that I could handle it, then they don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would actually do a pretty strong link to coworkers in that regard as well, because, well, those are the people I see every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And Max, we talked about, well, you both talked about coworkers in a previous episode and talking about it to coworkers, which I don't recall which episode that was, but I'll find it because I think
It was one of
in-
the ones.
Well,
it was Max's
prior to
episode.
this.
yeah. And I I have an update. I have a new situation because there's a new couple guys that I've been working with over the last 3 weeks or month or so, that I didn't really know at all previously. And, when we come back to work on Monday and they go like, "What'd you do over the weekend?" And since a large part of my weekend now is podcasting about polyam and kink issues, and also like I want to tell stories about my three partners who amalgam often into one partner.
My wife.
Like I am now at the position where like I feel like I can do the thing that I have always done with work people who I felt like, okay, I get it. They're kind of laid back. They're not too conservative. They're not like too super right wing. They're not too super Christian-y. That I can go like, all right, man, here's the 3 things you need to know about what's going on with my relationships. And I feel like it's going to go exactly the same way it always is, which is, all right, man, cool. Anyway, you want to get back to work or what are we doing here? You know?
I tend to build up the wall of prudishness around me because it seems like, contrary to everything I thought about office environments, sex and relationship talk is just everywhere. No matter what, like, if that's where you spend the majority of your time with people, they're going to be people and they're going to talk about it.
Monogamous or not, that's what they're talking about.
And so I'm just like, I'm not comfortable discussing it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say some gendery shit. Having worked on construction sites, having worked with all male truck drivers, having worked in a warehouse with mostly male employees, like, women who work in offices are nasty. Like, women who work in offices talk about shit that dudes on construction sites will not talk about.
Well, but I think that's not just about women working in offices. I think that speaks more to gendered communication stuff and toxic masculinity, and the fact that women are more socialized to talk about their feelings, and therefore they talk about their feelings a lot.
I'm not talking about feelings. I'm talking about sitting in an office cubicle listening to the other 8 women in an office like have graphic sexual conversations out loud.
I know. But there are also like things about boundaries. There are
Not
also
with those women.
there are also
that is true.
There are also different politics involved, whereas a group of women can sit around and talk about sex at work and it won't be an HR issue, but the minute a man becomes involved, it will become an HR issue, because in corporate environments especially, that's a tricky thing. I was involved in an HR case at my old corporate job where just because a man walked by and I said something of a sexual nature to a fellow female coworker, he was called into and had an HR complaint filed against him, and I had to testify. And I testified in his favor, but he still got a year of like being on like probation or whatever.
Because he was walking by.
I'm not gonna give any more details than that. But I'm just gonna say that I was the one who said something of a sexual nature and involved butt stuff. So,
Well, fucking of course it did.
You're welcome. So I think there are some things, and it's also, I should say that as somebody who has worked closely with HR in a management position in the corporate world, you should not come out at work as polyamorous. You should not come out at work as kinky. You can absolutely come out as LGBTQ. That is a protected thing. Nothing else is protected. You are not protected as polyamorous. You are not protected as kinky. You can lose your job in the state of Virginia because it is a right-to-work state. You will lose your job if somebody decides that they don't like that you are polyamorous or kinky. Don't come out. Don't joke about it. Don't be jovial with your coworkers about it. It is right for Hannah to be prudish at work and not talk about it. That is the way that it should be handled. I had bruises at work one time. I joked with my coworkers at the lunch table about it, but I could have very easily lost my job. And that was very irresponsible of me to tell somebody that they were bite marks on my chest.
Yeah, I feel like I see this a lot online. And I know that sometimes, we embellish the story a little bit. But I feel like I see a lot of people talking about having this relationship with their coworkers where they joke or they, bring in things that people are uncomfortable with, which first of all, just not appropriate, not okay, but also, very risky.
Yeah.
And,
sexual harassment is an actual thing. Just it's not cute. It's not funny. Don't make people uncomfortable at work. Sorry.
I will say that as I've been, in workplaces longer, you develop friendships, and I have people that I have charity work or I have friendships with, outside of the office. And those people, just by being a bigger part of my life, ask those questions. And I have never lied to protect a secret. So I guess I can say in that regard, I have not been in the closet the way that some people have been, which is, a real privilege. But yeah, definitely just not in the office. It's not okay.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the sex talk is, I don't want to be part of it.
Yeah, don't brag about the crazy threesome you had. But here's the thing. In a corporate environment, you're less likely to get away with that than you are in a blue-collar or construction environment. So, say, if Max or Eric, which neither of them are, if they were the type to brag about, like, the cool, awesome six-way orgy they had, which neither of them are the type to brag about it, but if they were, they could probably get away with it. Because I doubt very seriously either of them has an HR department.
No, we just would have potentially a conservative owner or contractor or something.
Exactly.
Just like, get the fuck out of here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Still,
Yeah,
right.
That's not
Yeah.
necessarily any less likely to get away with it or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
And as a subcontractor, someone who is reliant on other people for my livelihood,
Right.
like I know who have a perfect right to choose to use me on a job or not use me on a job based on anything or nothing.
Yeah.
Whether
There's-
it's
in
my
fact, there's
haircut
a lot
or-
less protection for us in that
or my
regard than in the
politics or
corporate
anything
environment.
else, like I don't talk about politics on the job,
Mhm.
A, because it makes people mad, and also because it might mean that, somebody just doesn't want to use me on a job, and they
Yeah.
have the perfect right to do that. I don't tell sex stories on a job because I think sex stories are kind of gross,
It's
Yeah.
gauche.
but also but also because that is another reason that somebody might not want to use me, and I am selective with whom I talk about my relationships because it's my fucking business and nobody else's.
Absolutely.
And also, it might be a reason that somebody doesn't want to use me on a job that I need to earn a livelihood, to pay my mortgage, and to feed my family.
So, bottom line is, I know that you have your work family, and you might be friendly with them, and you might know them really well, and you might, like, babysit their kids and all that stuff, but understand the work laws in your state and understand whether or not your employer can fire you because they decide that they don't like the fact that you are polyamorous or kinky. For the state of Virginia is a right to work state, which means that your employer can fire you without any cause, right? How does that work?
More or less.
More or less, yeah.
Well,
Not strictly
At will.
speaking, but yeah.
We're also speaking to people outside of Virginia.
I know, so
and
I'm
all
saying,
states' laws are different.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
I'm saying look up the laws in your state, province, county, shire,
parish.
parish, whatever. So whatever
Prefecture?
prefecture. So whatever state, country, nation you're in, understand the laws that are keeping you employed right now.
And don't mess with Texas.
And don't. Max has a "Don't mess with Texas" mug he's drinking from that he stole from Hannah's old apartment. So yeah. So the last thing we want to talk about, which is the heaviest thing we want to talk about, is coming out to family. So, Hannah.
I had a whole episode about this.
Hannah had a
It's
whole
called Not Here to
episode.
talk about your feelings.
Yes, it's called. It's episode 3.
3, in which I tell you the sad story of how
Yes.
coming out got stolen from me. Woe is me.
Yeah, so Hannah has a whole episode about her coming out story. So we're gonna kind of skip you.
Okay.
Max, you talk about coming out in your episode too.
Yeah, but
don't
I'll
you?
go. Since we're just kind of collecting everything, I'll
Yeah.
run through it real quick.
Yeah.
The aforementioned pseudonymed, is that, can you use
Sure.
that word
Sarah.
that way?
I'll allow it.
Yeah. Sarah was, well known to my family of origin. And so around the time that Chas and I were getting married, there was not only the fact that she had been around, but there was another previous partner who was like seen coming and going from my home and things like that. Like, so when I was in a relationship, the long-term-ish relationship that I was in before Hannah, I set all these like false deadlines for myself where I was like, once we have been dating this long, I will talk to my sister and tell her what the situation is. My sister being the only like close family member I had left. Okay, we'll pass that deadline. Here's the next deadline. Once we've been dating this long, I'll do that. Once we've been dating this long, I'll do that. And I finally did. I finally like wrote the overly long, overly explanatory, overly wordy email to my sister To which she basically responded, I mean, it was a little more than this, but to which she basically responded like, yeah, me and Mom figured it out with Sarah. Relax. So the lesson I think here being is like, your family is more perceptive than you think they are, so it's probably not as big a deal as you think it is. So relax.
Yeah, so, I posed this question. I asked people if they had any questions about coming out or if they wanted any advice, and nobody wanted any, so that's fine too. And I did ask this question on our favorite app, Whisper, not sponsored. What would be...
Holy shit, we should get a Whisper sponsorship. That'd be awesome.
They don't want
Tell
us.
us your secrets.
Tell us your secrets.
Talk about it and,
I know, right? I did say, what is the best piece of advice you could give to somebody coming out to their family as polyamorous? And they said, just be cool about it. Like, don't make it a big deal. So I think, again, Max, like you said earlier, it's all in context. Right. Like, Hannah, for you, it was a pretty fucking big deal, right? Whether you were trying to be casual about it or not.
And the longer I worried about it, I guess the bigger deal it came.
Yeah.
It became.
Yeah.
I think I screwed myself over with my extreme introvert tendencies as well, because...
Is that the same as saying non-confrontational?
A little bit, but I was more talking about, like, my parents were like, so there are 3 people on your Facebook that you, like, seem to have a close relationship with and actually take pictures with. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't have a big friend group surrounding me.
Okay, got it.
They knew that if I was spending a significant amount of time devoted to a relationship, it's because... But it was a romantic relationship.
Also, at the time, you didn't think your parents knew how to use Facebook. So
right. I severely underestimated their ability to track down.
Click.
Yeah. To stalk me on the internet. Now I know. Are you just trying to get me to giggle?
I just want you to say it.
Pod, meat, flask.
Thank you.
I'll see it work.
Pod, meat, flask.
I was trying to make Eric laugh, but he just had no reaction because he saw me write it. Okay.
Yeah, you were writing it for 5 minutes.
It took up a whole page of the notebook.
To write 4 words.
I'm a slow writer.
Good job derailing the talk, though. That was awesome.
I wasn't derailing.
But you did.
Yeah. Intentional or no, that's what happened.
I'm sorry.
So where were we? There was something about
nobody has to come out unless I want to.
Nobody has to come out unless they want to.
And they're ready.
And if somebody forces you out, they're an asshole.
Yes, if somebody does force you out, they're an asshole. So I never really had to come out, like, officially. Like, I'm kind of one of those dickheads who's just, like, every year, like, I just post on Facebook, like, my list of things that I am. And
I don't even do that.
Yeah, you're wide open, dude.
I am. I'm wide open. Like, there just came a point where I stopped caring what other people thought about me, and I don't have, like, a vanilla life or a corporate overlord to respond to or defer to anymore. So I just kind of, like, yeah, that's it. I'm just me. So yeah, I never got the chance to come out to my mom. My mom died, so that happened. I didn't have to come out to my sister because she got me my membership to our local fetish club. I didn't have to come out to her as bi either because I think she figured that out a long time ago when I was trying to look at her boobs. She reminded me of this, that I, like, when I was little, I would run around and try to grab both my sister's boobs and just go, boobies, boobies. Yeah. And yeah, I just never really I didn't have the chance to come out, and yeah. So
Did you not have the chance or not, like, make the opportunity?
I didn't make the opportunity. I guess I was scared.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of chicken shit.
Sure. I mean, but that's not, like, I'm not saying that so you beat yourself up about it. Like, why wouldn't you be?
Well, like me, for instance, I've not to anyone in my family, but at the same time, that has actually nothing to do with poly. I just don't really feel like sharing that part of my life with them.
Well, you
anyway.
you also don't, like, really talk to them about personal stuff. Like,
well, and there's a lot about, like, coming out to your children that, like...
That's a whole other episode.
But I'm allowed to...
No, I wasn't.
No, not this one. No,
but there's,
nope.
I wasn't stopping you.
Not now.
But,
next
like,
time.
There are things about, like, coming out to your children, coming out to your parents, coming out to certain people in your lives that, like, any relationship isn't a deposition.
Right.
Right.
You're not required to give every piece of
Exactly.
information about yourself
Right.
to everybody in your life. And if you don't want to talk about being kinky, if you don't want to talk about who you're fucking, if you don't want to talk, like, you don't
Right.
fucking have to.
I think that the different things have different necessities for coming out. I think that you never have to come out as kinky if you don't want to. I think that you only really need to come out as polyamorous if you want partners to be around people that you know and you want to be able to be affectionate without having a lot of weird questions. And I think that the only time you should only come out as LGBTQIA+ when you're ready.
But that being said, coming out is a political action. Because the more people that are openly out about any given thing
at this point in time, yes,
is a thing.
I agree with that now.
Yeah.
Yes, I would. Yeah, I agree with that now.
I think
Did you agree with it then?
I would not have agreed with that 5 years ago. No, I would not have said that 5 years ago. I would have said that it is a personal thing, and I would not have agreed that it was a political action.
I was just going to say another related word of caution is that although we are often very excited to find anybody who is like-minded with us and who is going to support us, if you're coming out and you have it, you can be taken advantage of. Is what I'm
Yes.
trying to get at here. I'm going to stop hemming and hawing. People who are outwardly supportive and enthusiastic about you coming out in whatever manner can also be people who are just looking to take advantage of you in that moment.
Yes.
And you got to protect yourself. You got to take care of yourself and be vigilant because, sometimes we have just a desperate feeling to be seen and to be heard for who we are. And we're not as careful about those people, who are willing to agree with us, who are willing to say yes to that moment. I just want everybody to be safe.
Yeah. Be safe.
Yeah.
For me,
For
me,
Okay.
outside of my one close family member, my sister, outside of talking to people during testing, medical professionals during testing, coming out poly, quotey fingers, like polyam, is about, I want to talk about something about one of my partners that I either think is funny or that I am proud of, I am very proud of my partner, Hannah, for, completing her education all on her own, and, we went to a graduation ceremony, and I'm very proud of, where she graduated, and that she graduated, and all that stuff, and I want to talk about that sort of thing, but I have to, to do that, I have to explain that, all right, so I have this other relationship besides my wife, and, this is who this person is, and here are the circumstances around that thing, and all these things. Or if I just want to tell a funny or endearing story about my wife and my girl hanging out, that's another thing that I have to explain.
So what you're saying is you're avoiding burying the lead every time. Because if you're like, she graduated, I'm proud, and then you have
but
to
I have to say who that person is.
Right.
This amalgam of partners that I was talking about before is a fucking drag, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Or just
also,
calling people friends all the time.
Yeah, and also it's starts not to make sense when I give a detail about Chastain, which is in direct conflict
Right.
with Lauren being kind of a punk rock chick. Yeah.
Again, yeah. Always easier if you already know the response they're going to have before you do it.
So I want to go back.
Context, case by case.
I want to go back to something that Hannah said because people who are LGBTQ who are in the closet and we haven't addressed trans issues because none of us are trans and we'd have no grounds to speak on this at all. But going back to what Hannah said about coming out and being careful about who's around you and who's celebrating you in that moment. Because you can learn that some of those people who are celebrating you will go away.
Yeah.
It is really, really vital that you have a plan when you're getting ready to talk to somebody who has a lot of emotional impact in your life. You don't always know somebody's emotional response. You don't always know, you can't always predict what they're going to say or think or how they're initially going to react. And sometimes it takes somebody some time to come around to how they actually feel about something. And their initial reaction is the reaction that society or their own upbringing or their own history has brought them. And it might not be the reaction that is genuinely about you and who you are as a person and what you're telling them. You need to be prepared to hear something that is unpleasant. You need to be prepared to hear something that hurts. Don't expect hurt, but just be prepared for hurt and have a plan for that. Have a plan to have somebody who supports you already and who you are already out to talk to, or maybe to come with you, to hold you or hold your hand or eat ice cream with you or something afterwards. Don't plan to be alone afterwards. Don't plan to go to your parents and then come out to them and then still stay the weekend because you don't know how they're going to respond. And then you're in a situation where you can't escape. Don't put yourself in situations you can't get away from. Put yourself in a situation where you've set yourself up for success. So give yourself time to process, give them time to process, give yourself space, give them space, and understand that people's feelings are not your responsibility. People's initial feelings are not necessarily their true feelings, and that you are valid and that you deserve to be seen however you want to be seen and whenever you want to be seen, and you deserve to decide when you come out. So that's all I had to say about that.
And people are entitled to whatever shitty reaction they have.
Yeah.
No matter how shitty their reaction is.
Yeah.
It's still their reaction to it.
But if they're
you
shitty,
ain't gonna change it, dude.
But if they're shitty to you or abusive to you or anything to you other than just like anything that feels wrong,
then also be prepared to say fuck you.
Yeah, and I do like the although I don't know, it borders on like too something for me. I do like the Dan Savage piece of advice, piece of information that like once you're an adult, the leverage you have over your parents is your presence.
yes.
So if you reveal anything about your life and your parents can't deal with it, your leverage is to say like, okay,
all right, well, later.
that's fine. And if you have grandkids, if you have children,
Then you got
grandkids are
lots
even
of
more so.
leverage.
Like if you're going to be shitty about this thing about me, I don't want you to be like around my kids because you're being shitty.
The big issue that I take with that is that we are in an economy where more children are choosing to or forced to, because of finances, live at home longer or move back home.
Right.
So that can cause
obviously
issues.
you're in a vulnerable position like that. That's
So
different.
if you are in a vulnerable position, just make sure that you're making the right choice for you at the time. Make sure that you're protected and make sure that you're doing a cost-benefit analysis. And I'm going to put some resources in the show notes about coming out as kinky, polyam, and LGBTQ. I'm going to put some hotline links and also some of the therapy resources that Hannah and I have discussed. Again, nothing is sponsored. And so I think that's it. Are we good on this episode?
Yeah, this has been kind of a bummer. And
Well,
it's
we're
gone
gonna
long, so we
well,
should
we're
wrap
gonna do
this up.
fun stuff next. So
No, let's just
Not
let's
now.
just- oh yeah, okay.
all right.
I'm gonna register Kelp as a website. And
Kelp?
That would be yeah. That's
It's like Kinky Yelp.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Because
right.
then it's
But, like,
monosyllabic and
Kinky ends with a Y and Yelp begins with a Y, and that
So
seems
it's-
I think there's something there.
Kinky Yelp.
Kinky Yelp. Kinky.
No,
Listen,
Yelp is
just-
gonna sue
Yeah,
you.
it doesn't work.
Yelp.
Just Kelp.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Bye. You've just heard the Pod Cultcast with your hosts Max, Chastain, Hannah, and Eric. Our theme song is Spencer Blues by Lobo Loco. Our break music is by Gabarino on YouTube. We have a listener survey going on right now, and we would love your feedback. If you could take 10 minutes to visit www.podcultcast.com/survey2019, we would love to hear from you. Give us your feedback on our episode length, how often we release, and the content that we provide. We want to make the best podcast for ourselves and for you. Thank you so much for listening.